You can be successful and still be living in the basement. Most people think ego is about arrogance, bravado, that me mindset. And you're not totally wrong, but there's more to it than that. The ego is your protective architecture. It is built inside human psychology, and it was developed super early on as a way to create protection within us, basically so we wouldn't jump off of buildings and, dive in front of things. It was developed as a level of consciousness, a survival mechanism in the brain and the nervous system and the level of mind to keep us alive, to keep us functioning, and to keep us safe. But here's the problem. When the ego is operating unconsciously, and for most of us it is, it drives the personality. And when it's driving that personality, you are living in what I call the basement. Now, the basement is not a bad place. It's not about failure. It's not about doing something wrong. And it's also not about, I don't have this, because we all do. It's about protection running the system. It's about our defense mechanisms making our decisions. When our defense mechanisms are making our decisions for us, it completely alters how we see the world, how we see the people that we are in relationship with, how we are experiencing things that happen, quote unquote, to us, which is a different story. The ego was just created to protect you. That is its only function. And the problem is, it's really good at its job, and it doesn't always know when to stop. It is consistently scanning the environment for potential threats. It actually misinterprets these threats for a living. It has changed from understanding human threat to be a chasing tiger because we're living in the cave days, to now potential threats have more to do with social constructs, relationship structures, things of that nature. It protects itself from annihilation is the other built-in character flaw, meaning it wants to be the ruler of this reality all the time. It thinks it knows better than I do. It thinks it knows better than something above me does. And quite frankly, it thinks it can control everything. It lives out of past wounds. It was developed and groomed and refined from the moment we got here, when we started learning what sounds to make as a baby got us fed versus what sounds to make as a baby got us picked up. We learned, and it learned through the development of our language, through how we express emotionally, through the patterns in our childhood and in our lives. If we learned that to get a need met, we got more love when we were sick, well, the ego now interprets that to mean when I'm sick, I get protection and love, which is ultimately its goal. It lives out of those past wounds, but the other thing it does is it creates a consistent imagined future. It constantly thinks, well, if I do this, then I'll be able to change this outcome. Or if I had done that, the outcome would have been different. It thinks it's in control all the time, and quite frankly, we fall asleep and think it is too. The ego absolutely fears exposure. It's going to do everything it can to keep those defense mechanisms, to keep your shadows tucked in nicely, to make sure you look the part, to make sure there's no threat, right? It fears exposure. It doesn't want to be seen, but yet it tries to be seen all the time. And it creates separation internally because it's constantly bouncing between these two opposites. It has no internal guidance, no internal structure other than to survive and get its needs met. Here's the challenge, though. The ego is a basement level of consciousness. It's a lower vibration level of consciousness, but it's using you as its vehicle. It's kind of like having autopilot on and not even realizing it. But the ego's not bad, y'all. We're not trying to get rid of it. It's protective. The problem is that when it is driving unconsciously, when we are allowing this part of us to sit in the driver's seat of any given moment of our lives, it's creating isolation. It's creating separation right there in that moment. Here's some examples of basement behavior. If feedback starts to feel like a threat to you, you're not weak. You're in the basement. If you don't like being told, hey, let's talk, or if somebody says, hey, meet me in my office later, creates that little, uh-oh, I'm in trouble feeling inside of you, that's a perfect example of the ego. You're falling into the basement. And trust me, we all fall. What I care about is how quickly can you get out? How quickly do you recognize you're there? Over-explaining, that's the ego trying to control perception. I want to control how you see me or what you think my intentions are, or I want to prove to you that I know what I'm doing when I'm in that over-explaining. I feel like I have to justify my yes, justify my no, just so you will see me in a certain way. Defensiveness is protection pretending to be strength. I didn't do that. That wasn't me. I did that because that's the ego just posturing because it doesn't want its weaknesses and its vulnerabilities to be exposed. Over-functioning, that's not leadership. That's the ego trying to secure love. When we're constantly letting the ego run our lives, we are consistently walking in a sleep state. It's like walking around like this and expecting things to be different. Another example of a basement behavior, I can do it myself. We're going to talk about that one in a minute. The other one is blame when it's disguised as discernment. My truth is, or I've thought about it and I can see now that you were the one at fault, or I can see why that I did this. That's not discernment, y'all. That's blaming the outside. Basement energy might feel powerful, but it's actually nothing more than a protection. I can do it myself. Well, that was never about independence. It was always about survival. The ego didn't make me arrogant. It made me alone, is what happened. Let me give you an example of what I mean. When I was a kid, Mighty Mouse was one of my nicknames. Now, I always thought it was cute and kind of held a little pride in it because I could tote the heavy things and I could pick this up by myself and I could do it by myself and I could write it by myself and I could take care of myself and I could always do it myself. And even now, my husband and I laugh because you can guarantee that if I get frustrated or if I get slightly annoyed, then that I can do it myself is coming out full force. But here's why. Connection always led to some kind of betrayal when I was growing up. I was betrayed by the church because I didn't dress right, or the shame that I felt growing up being raised inside religion. I was betrayed by my stepfather when he sexually abused me from the ages of 9 to 14. I was betrayed by spouses and boyfriends every time there was a cheating incident. I was betrayed by myself every time I said yes when I meant no, because compliance had become my protection. I learned to doing it myself is how I learned to survive. But the problem is doing it myself is not really a functional way of living. If I consistently allow the ego to show up and Mighty Mouse to rear her head, well, right there in that moment, I'm saying unconsciously, I don't need you. It creates a wall. It creates a block. When I'm trusting only myself, well, then we have a problem. Because there was one pivotal moment in my healing journey when I was with my first teacher, and he asked me a question that I always ask my clients. What do you believe in that's bigger than you? What do you put faith in that's larger than you? And I sat back and I thought, well, nothing, because everything had always failed me. I've always only learned to do it myself. The ego became my only safe attachment. Protection is only going to be able to keep you alive, but it's going to also keep you alone. It's going to keep you stuck. It's going to keep you exhausted. Protection is going to consistently create relationship strain. You're going to feel chronic tension, stress in your body because that fight or flight system is consistently activated. We all know that we have medical issues that come out of stress. Strains on our heart, strains on our blood, strains on our nervous system, strains on our adrenals, strains on our brain and our body and our mind and our spirit, and quite frankly, every part of us. We live in this world of a self-created struggle, a self-created suffering. That's not drama. That's just clarity. Isolation can feel sometimes safer than connection until it doesn't. Until we get into relationships as adults and we can't quite feel loved enough, or we find ourselves cycling through the same patterns. And here's the thing. You can't destroy the ego. You're stuck with it. You're stuck with it for the rest of this life. I tell people all the time, as long as you've got a body, as long as you're in a body, you still have work to do because the ego is still operating. Remember, you don't destroy it. You just outgrow letting it drive. The personality, you, The person that you know runs this life and lives this life, the person that you see glimmers of, the part of you that knows something's not right, and why did I react that way, and why can't I break these patterns, and how do I keep finding myself here? That part of you chooses who drives. The difference is most of us haven't even been taught how to discern who's driving in a given moment. How do we even know if it's ego? Because let me tell you, I first thought that I had my shit together too until I had a really great teacher show me what I didn't know. I do it myself, only works so long until it doesn't. The personality is the vehicle. Think of it like your avatar. Think of it like the part of you that you get to live this life in that includes your name, how you show up in the world, how you identify, all of the ways that you interact with the world. People tell me all the time that's just the way I am. I'm like, really? I don't even think half of us know who we are if we're honest. So you want to start to look at, am I living an ego-directed life or a soul-directed life? Am I living a life that's directed from my patterns and my protections and my past? Or am I living a life that is aligned with who I know myself to be? Do I even know who that is? Elevation is about nothing more than awareness. We're not trying to change who you are. We're not trying to make you become somebody who you are not. I used to think that a spiritual journey was all about me aligning with some idea of what a spiritual teacher looked like, or a therapist looked like, or a healer looked like. Now I know I'm just here to figure out who I am. I got to learn myself. I've got to learn how to let that part of me that is organically in here, who I was created to be, who you are created to be, aside from the wounds, aside from the projections and who the world told us to be or who the world told us we were, that's who we want to let shine through. Because when we learn how to integrate, the fear of annihilation goes away. And what that means is, I no longer care about how you see me. I no longer am worried about being the villain in your story or about how you may misperceive what I'm saying. If you want clarity, ask me. I'll give it to you. But if I'm offering you something and you choose to see me in a certain way, well, I can't control that anymore. I can no longer be annihilated. I can no longer be shamed or judged because I've done that to myself enough. See, that's the thing. You don't escape the basement by pretending you don't live there. Awareness is basement work. Taking responsibility for what's in the basement, that's the street level work. That's when we start to talk about releasing victim stories, releasing victim loops, becoming responsible more than we're being reactive. I take a moment and there's a pause that gets in play before that shadow aspect of me, before that defensive pattern shows up. Or if that defensive pattern does show up, I recognize it really quickly and know exactly what to do to take care of myself so that it doesn't continue to run the show. I break the loop. Power is about choice. It's not about bravado and showing you how strong I am or proving to you that I know what I'm talking about. It's about choosing which floor of the high rise of consciousness am I going to live on in any given moment. And I'm going to be honest, sometimes I get thrown to the basement. Sometimes I choose to sit in the basement. But I always know that I'm there. If you're really ready to stop reacting and start living from a chosen life, start actively choosing how you respond in given moments and becoming an architect in your own life, well, this is where we're about to start working next. The ego, it's going to keep you alive, but it's always going to have a problem. But the soul teaches you how to live. The ego, it's going to protect you. It's going to keep your defense mechanisms active. It's going to keep your past stories running. It's going to keep those bones from the cemetery of dead events close at hand so that you can draw them up and say, look what's happened to me, and this is why I am the way I am. Soul level consciousness, that's going to connect you to a now that exists right here, right now, this moment in your life as it is. There is no waiting around for ifs or buts. It's right here for the taking, right here for the knowing, full of potential, rocked with possibilities. The soul connects you to a source vibration that you can call God, you can call source, you can call divine intelligence. It goes by 1,000 different names, but science continues to prove that it exists. The personality, you, the one watching this video right now, that's the one that gets to decide. And you're either going to choose consciously or you're going to keep choosing unconsciously. The elevation is about integration. It's not about sitting on a mountain or meditating for hours or learning how to be something different than who you are. It's about taking who you are and calling that fully forward from a conscious place. Now, living consciously, that's the boss move. The question isn't whether you have an ego. The question is always, who is driving?